I've done my fair share of rib cooks on this channel, and particularly the kind of Texas style ribs is personally my favorite style of rib, and I love to try and recreate as best as I can some of the ribs that I've had in Texas at some of the top barbecue joints. There's loads of different ways to do it. There's loads of different ways that I do it, but today I'm going to show you the method that I'm using the most at the moment. My process hasn't changed a huge amount, and there's going to be nothing revolutionary in here, and really I just wanted to cook up a real nice rack of Texas style spare ribs. And that's partly because I found this really nice big rack of spare ribs from John Davidson's. Bought these at Pro Smoke, they sell them in the shop, and I really wanted to cook them up. And it can be quite tricky to find good racks of spare ribs here in the UK. We're a big pork belly eating nation, and generally we don't eat a lot of ribs, and pork belly is generally expensive, meaning that if I'm a butcher and I'm taking the pork belly off a rack of spare ribs, I'm going to get as close to the bones as possible to try and maximize the amount of pork belly I get, because I'm going to make more money on that than I will on these ribs. So you quite often see shiners. But anyway, on this I'm going to do some pretty standard prep. Going to take off that skirt. This is going to go into sausage, like this thin, feathery stuff. And I'm probably going to take off this end bone here because it's very thin. There's not a lot of meat on there. And then on this side, anything that's kind of bulging, I'm going to take off. In fact, I might take this end bone off. I don't personally think that this rib bone is going to produce good barbecue. Yeah, and I can already tell that this isn't going to be the best looking rack of ribs, but they're going to be tasty. There's a lot of stuff hanging off. Butchery's a little bit weird on them, but I don't really want to take them down too much more. Kind of rounded everything out, and they're probably trimmed up as good as they're going to get. Moving back onto the membrane side, I personally don't take the membrane off. There's a load of fat in there under the membrane. If you take it off, all that fat's going to come out. If you keep it on, all the fat's going to stay in, and you're going to be eating it. I said this before, the way we're going to cook these ribs, taking the membrane off is completely unnecessary. It really doesn't take any effort to take it off, but I think they're better if you keep it on. But you do whatever you want. So in terms of the seasoning on these ribs, I like a salt and pepper rub, as you probably know. But if I'm going to use salt and pepper, I'd rather use a seasoned salt. That's going to add a little bit more color, a little bit more flavor with the garlic, paprika, all that kind of stuff. And one of the big reasons I like using a seasoned salt is that all of that stuff in there that isn't salt will remain as texture on the surface. So if you just use salt and pepper, you'll get a really nice texture and visual from the pepper, but all of that salt will have dissolved into the meat. Whereas if you use a seasoned salt, all of that stuff, the chili powders, the garlic, the onion powder, anything else that you put in there will likely not dissolve, giving you a really nice kind of bumpy texture all the way along. And I think that's a look that a lot of people try to go for, and the seasoned salt will definitely help with that. So today I'm just going to be using my seasoned salt, my homemade seasoned salt, but I would equally just use Lawry's or any other branded seasoned salt, or any other barbecue restaurant's brand of seasoned salt. I'm just using this one so I can link this video here on how to make it. Before we apply that, I'm going to go on with some coarse black pepper. This is the Kirkland brand from Costco, coarse black pepper, and I'm going to go on with a fairly heavy coating of that. Doing it from a height so it's nice and evenly spread. Pat that in, let that stick. Then we're going to go on with a heavy coating of our seasoned salt. Pat that in, just allowing whatever wants to stick to stick. Heavy black pepper and heavy seasoned salt. And then just let whatever wants to fall off, fall off. And that is pretty much how I season up my ribs. These are ready to go. I'm going to be cooking them on the offset pit. I'm not going to intentionally leave this for any amount of time. These will go on as soon as I've got a fire going in my pit. So we've got the pit fired up around about 225 to 250 and cook here for the next couple of hours. Nice and low, nice and smoky, build up some good smoke flavor and some good color. So about 4 hours in on this rib cook. These are looking good, they're looking a little dry. I'm going to give them a spritz with apple cider vinegar, water and some Worcestershire sauce. Color wise they're looking really nice. But these will just go back on and we'll keep cooking at around 250 to 275-ish. So when it comes to adding a sauce to this style of rib, the kind of rib that you would find at a top 50 barbecue joint in Texas, I like to go for something that's going to bring some sweetness, some acidity, but you wouldn't necessarily know there was a sauce on there. It's going to be much more of a glaze and less of a gloopy barbecue sauce. When these ribs eventually rest in foil with that glaze, it's going to mix with the juices from the ribs and it's going to create an almost emulsified, sweet, slightly acidic glaze that's going to hopefully coat the entire rack of ribs, make them look really nice, but also just bring those extra things to what are currently just salt and pepper ribs or seasoned salt and pepper ribs. So I'm going to make up a very quick eyeballed glaze. So I'm just going to get a squirt bottle and then I'm going to go in with some ketchup, some honey, some maple syrup, some white grain vinegar, not distilled white malt vinegar, some apple cider vinegar, And then gonna go in with a big pinch of that seasoned salt that I use to season the ribs. This is just gonna bring some garlic, some onion, some salt, and some other flavors. Obviously you could just put those things in separately, but seasoned salt's a pretty good one-stop shop. Very good. Slightly sweet. In fact, it's slightly on the more acidic side than I'd like. So I'm gonna add a little bit more maple syrup. That's gonna give it a nice gloss, a nice viscosity. Perfect. So obviously I eyeballed that. I'm looking for something that's quite runny, nothing too thick, nothing too gloopy. It's not really a barbecue sauce, it really is just a glaze. And you might have seen in previous videos, I've done just simple syrup, which is just water and sugar. So this is similar in texture, but it's got a little bit more flavor to it. So if you're looking for a recipe that's similar to this, that's completely repeatable and hits every single time, if you check out this video by Bare Barbecue, there's a link in the description where you can buy their rib glaze recipe. I think it's only $5. It's very, very good. It's got all the ingredients and the amounts, and you can just make it over and over. For days like this, I just eyeball it a lot of the time. But if you're the kind of person that likes a recipe, definitely check that out. So we'll put this to the side and we'll apply this at the very, very last stage. Near enough 6.5 hours since these went onto the pit. Nice color on them, really nice color on them, nice and dark. Gonna use my chef's temp to give it a first initial poke, make sure it's feeling nice and tender between the bones, but ultimately I'm gonna be pushing my fingers between the bones, and if I feel like I can make my fingers touch, then they're done, which I can. A little bit annoyed about this split here, but it'll be absolutely fine. We're gonna take them inside, hit them with a glaze, and let them rest. So as I say, they're completely cooked. I'm gonna go down with some of that glaze. I'm actually gonna hit that top side with some glaze as well. Flip these over and put them meat side down. Little glaze on the back. Then we'll get them wrapped up. Trying to keep that foil as close to the meat as possible. Go through, push that foil into the meat, and these can just hang out and rest for 20 minutes. 30 to 45 minutes later, these ribs are fully rested down. So I'm gonna open them up and see how they look. And what I'm looking for is a nice dark rib with a nice glaze on top. Nothing too thick. Just something with a really nice sheen on it. I think that's pretty good. These are gonna be good, I'm sure of it. So I'm gonna flip them over and slice them this way. I don't trust myself cutting these bones side down, so I'm gonna take a big rib. That's looking nice. Looking reasonably juicy inside. These aren't the fattiest ribs. Yeah, really like the look of those. Great looking ribs. All that texture on there from the pepper, but everything in between is just seasoned salt. You wouldn't get that if it was just a salt and pepper rib. Very, very nice looking ribs. Bit disappointed by this, but you get the idea. And hopefully you can see what I mean by a rib that isn't sauced, but is glazed. It's not thick, you can see the texture and the color of the meat, but it's there, it's gonna provide some acidity, some sweetness. Should be delicious. Perfect cook. Meat just comes off the bone, clean bone in there. That is just a very, very good classic Texas style rib, or I guess modern Texas style rib. So immediately with these, the first thing that hits you is the smoke. Cooking on an offset and starting off nice and low and slow. Not only do you get nice little smoke rings like that, and like that, but it also just brings a really nice smoke flavor to the rib. The salt is perfect. That seasoned salt, just a layer of that with pepper, is the perfect amount of seasoning in my opinion. And yeah, that glaze balances out the fattiness, the richness, and the saltiness of the rib. So yeah, that's pretty much how I cook a Texas or Tex-ish style rib. Kind of method that I've been doing for quite a while now. Flavor's pretty much on point, and yeah, really, really simple to do. Good smoke, render the fat. There's really not a lot to it. So if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. It really, really, really does help me out, and I'll see you next week for another video.